today is going to be very interesting to a lot of people because many dogs struggle to be left home alone. This is pretty unsurprising since for thousands of years, humans have selectively bred dogs for the trait of wanting to be our constant companions. Because of this history, I don't know very many dogs at all who actually prefer to be left alone. Most dogs will tolerate it, but none love it, you know? But a large percentage of them experience more than just disappointment, which, in addition to being a welfare for the dog, poses a pretty big problem for us humans, too. But is it always separation anxiety? Not always. And depending on what the root problem is, how you handle it is going to differ. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But first, let me introduce myself for anyone who doesn't know me yet. My name is Jennifer Malloway. I am a dog trainer and behavior consultant, and my mission is to help you have a more magical relationship with your dog. If you aren't already, you can also hit subscribe on YouTube or like or follow me on Facebook so that you get notified of more content like this. And also feel free to share with anybody who has a dog and would like to improve their relationship. Speaking of dogs, Dizzy, we closed the blind so that he wouldn't hopefully bark at the neighbors. He likes to do that to sounds outside, which is a little bit, or one thing that we're going to talk about today. But we will come back to that. First, I would like to say hello, April, and thank you for joining us. Hopefully this helps. I know that Norin appears to struggle with being left alone, like a huge percentage of dogs, more than we would ever think. A lot of people don't even know that their dog has a problem when being left alone if they're not being extremely big in how they express their feelings. Another thing that we're going to get to in a little bit. But I first would like to kind of just talk about what separation anxiety is, because that is a term that gets thrown around a lot in the popular culture, and as such, it kind of its definition gets used in different ways. So when it comes to dogs and training and diagnosing separation anxiety, trainers, behaviorists that term is used to describe an actual panic disorder or a phobia. It is a dog with separation anxiety isn't making a conscious effort to be naughty or be difficult. They are out of their minds scared and cannot control how they express those feelings. And that's important to understand because if a dog is experiencing true separation anxiety, there are a lot of things that you could do to make it worse, and it can be difficult. It can be a long and difficult process to make it better, but it is doable. But we do want to make sure that it is separation anxiety first, because if you don't have to go through all of that work, we don't want you to, right? We want to save people as much trouble as possible. Welcome, Jessie. Hello. We're doing well today. We're very glad that it's Friday. Hoping that we'll be able to get out to the dog park this weekend because Dizzy needs some playtime. It's been cold and rainy again. So anyway, but thanks for saying hi. So where were we? Yes, defining separation anxiety. And it could also be helpful to mention that there are different types of separation anxiety as well. Separation anxiety can be kind of an umbrella term. And the way I think of it, there are two main types. There is isolation distress, which is what most people think of when they speak about separation anxiety, which just means if the dog is left completely alone, they struggle. and unwanted behavior happens, or unwanted by us. um, so isolation distress is generally what we're talking about when we're talking about separation anxiety. Then there's also hyperattachment, and for these poor dogs, they cannot be left, or they cannot relax and settle when they are separated from their person. Usually it's one person, could be two people, maybe, but they experience this distress and this fear when separated from specific people, which means if they can't just be left with anybody and feel comfortable. And so that's maybe even a more difficult variety of separation anxiety to handle, because it takes away some of the options that we have for managing the dog's fear while we are treating it. But yeah, so that's separation anxiety. And what does it look like? Let's talk about some of the more common symptoms. Usually, the big three are: there's going to be excessive vocalization, which could be barking or whining or crying or howling. A lot of dogs do that when left alone. That behavior in and of itself doesn't necessarily mean separation anxiety, but it is one of the more common symptoms. The other two are going to be destruction of the home, and in particular, usually this is scratching and chewing of door frames, the floorboards, and windows, and walls, directed mainly toward the exit points of the home. Lots of dogs chew. We know this. Dogs need outlets for chewing, but if it is directed mainly at exit points of the home, that's a pretty big indicator that it may be separation anxiety. Now, and then finally, house soiling in an otherwise house-trained dog. Let's see, April says, hyperattachment could be what happens when Joe is gone and I take Noran out for his walks. He is on such high alert and is not calm on his walk when Joe is gone. Could be. Does he tend to be a pretty high alert dog in any other context, or is it only when he's separated from Joe? And I'm also curious, does this happen if Joe takes him but you're gone, or if he sees you leave? But yeah, this happens quite a bit too. This is what Dizzy deals with, and it's funny. It's funny. Dizzy's kind of a tough case for me, because there have been times when I've left, but he's home with David, and Dizzy will not settle for an hour or more. So we're treating it as hyperattachment, but gosh, if there's any way around if there's any way around that treatment for anybody else, I would recommend it. This is, yeah, anyway. Okay, so those are our big three symptoms of separation anxiety, but those are not the only things that can indicate separation anxiety. Some other common things that will happen are anorexia, meaning the dog who otherwise is a fine eater will leave treats, chewies, their food alone. They won't touch the food when left alone, or left by their person. Yes, investigation and observation time. Data. Yes, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that today too, because we have to have a data set to even figure out what the problem is. Yeah, that's going to be investigation time for a lot of people. Okay, yes, so refusing treats and food when left alone, another big sign that the dog is over threshold. Some other things that happen are going to be pacing, could be excessive panting and drooling when it's not hot, especially. Attempts to escape, or on the reverse side, hiding, cowering or freezing, shaking, trembling. If you notice your dog getting anxious even before you leave the house, that's a pretty big diagnostic indicator that it could be true separation anxiety. And sometimes people think that a dog needs to be showing all of these signs or even many of these signs, but it's not, it could be one of them. How a dog, an individual dog, expresses their internal workings, their internal emotions, and what's going on, it is very individual, and it could just be one of those things, or it could be something else entirely. But and sometimes it's very subtle, which is part of why it's sometimes very tricky to diagnose. But their behavior will be different somehow when left alone. And let's see, Jesse says, we had a male lab who had very bad separation anxiety, even with 2 other labs at home with him. If he was left alone, he'd tear up the house. Yeah, and that's the sad thing. I mean, it's sad for me. Like, I just hate the thought that any dog is going through that. But it's important, and I'll say it now and I'll say it again. It is really important for owners to understand that separation anxiety is not something that we cause. There are things that we can do and that I recommend all new dog owners, not necessarily new dog owners, but dog owners do when they bring home a new dog, to try and lessen the chances that separation anxiety will show up. But there's strong evidence now that separation anxiety has a genetic component, which means, for many dogs, there may be nothing that you can do. They're going to develop it, and so we do what we can with what we've got. But it's nothing that we do to cause separation anxiety. And totally lost my train of thought there. Anyway, let's see. Greg, welcome. Greg says, when we leave our dog alone, here, let me put this up here. When we leave our dog alone, she pants, drools, and howls. We have a camera watching her. Wish we could figure out how to calm her down when we leave her. You're in the right spot, Greg. Thank you. I'm so glad you're joining us. Because yeah, panting, drooling, howling, all on that list. It could very well be separation anxiety. And a camera is a good place to start. You're jumping ahead of us here. We're gonna get there. I have to keep checking my notes. This is so important. It's an issue that's near and dear to my heart, and so I like to make sure that I'm not missing anything, because I have stage fright anxiety. I know that's not a real term, but it's something, it's something I'm still working through. So appreciate your guys' patience. Okay. So we covered some of the common signs, some of the common behaviors that dogs will do when they're experiencing separation anxiety. However, a lot of these same behaviors will occur due to a totally different root cause. And that's basically what today's show is about. This is about trying to puzzle out, could it be something else? Because if it is, the solution to those problems is likely to be a lot easier. And like I said, I'm trying to save people any effort. So getting this properly diagnosed is really where we want to start. April, thank you. She says, take your time. I'm soaking it up. It feels good to have you guys here too, and participating in the conversation. So some of the other conditions that could show up and appear to be separation anxiety. We'll start with the easy one, which is simple boredom. This is an epidemic. Dogs experiencing boredom is a huge problem in today's modern society. Most of us have jobs that we may be leaving the house for many hours at a time. Dogs are left alone to their own devices and are not given enough to do, either when they're left alone or when their people are with them. Dogs are very intelligent, social, complex beings, and they need to have their mental worlds provided for. They need mental exercise, and this could be partially physical exercise, but they also need ways to stretch and expand their brains. And I believe that for most people, they're still underestimating how far this can go in improving their dog's behavior in general. So we go into this way more in other streams about different ways that you can do that. But in general, a dog who's just understimulated and bored, when they're left home alone, they're gonna find, or actually, even when they aren't alone, they're gonna find ways to entertain themselves. And if we don't give them appropriate outlets for that behavior, most of the time, dogs are going to choose something that we don't like as ways to entertain themselves. So you can help your dog and thereby help yourself by providing them additional physical exercise, providing them additional mental enrichment, and then a third thing, which is can be kind of tricky, but it doesn't have to be, is just helping the dog understand, helping the dog to have appropriate expectations about what happens when you walk out the door. And I like to do this by creating just a very straightforward discrimination that the dog will pick up on about when they can expect that they are going with you, that you are going to go do something fun, and when they can expect that they're just going to be left alone and they have to deal with it. For the dog who is not experiencing any anxiety when left alone, it is simple boredom. This will help. You can create a verbal discrimination by saying something like, let's go, buddy, when they get to go with you, or not this time, friend, when they have to stay home. But very consistent discriminative cues. However, verbal cue for a dog might be more difficult to pick up on than something like a gear change. Like, say, if they're not going with you, they're just wearing a collar. If they do get to go with you, they're wearing a harness. Something that's very salient to the dog, but you consistently use it in those ways. So that's something that can help a dog who, like I said, it might be boredom. You could call it FOMO, where they're frustrated. They feel like, they just feel like you left, so you must be going to do something fun, and they feel like they must be missing out, and it's coming out as this frustration. I'm kind of combining two similar but separate issues of boredom and frustration. The frustration, we'll call that the FOMO issue, and that's really where that clear discrimination can help. So and also with frustration, the exercise and enrichment also will help there too. If a dog has excess energy to expend, then while you're gone, yes, they're going to find ways to entertain themselves and use up that energy. And a lot of times we don't like that. Welcome. Hi, Wagging Tails Dog Training. Thank you for joining us. Let's see. She says, my dog and I both have FOMO. Yeah, me too. I think Dizzy, I think a big part of it is FOMO too. But that's the thing. A lot of these issues can also overlap. Just makes it more complicated. Okay, so we've got, boredom, we've got frustration. Sometimes a simple house training, potty training, or chew training issue can appear to be separation anxiety when it occurs when the owner's gone. A simple rule out tests you can do is, if your dog, also these issues sometimes happen when you are home, then it could just be house training. It could just be chew training. In which case, those issues are so much easier to just train than treating it as separation anxiety. Where it gets a little tricky is if, in trying to break your dog of bad habits when it comes to chewing and soiling in the house, if you have used any form of punishment or startle, or if you were here on Monday, we talked about potty training, even interrupting the dog in a way that kind of freaks them out, can lead to a dog who will still do those behaviors maybe when you're home, but they might be a little sneaky about it. They might just do it in the other room if you're home, or when you are actually out of the house, they feel free to just do those natural, normal dog behaviors, but it comes out more when you're home because they've learned just not to do it in your presence. So it could be just simple house training, to training. It could be that the dog has actually not been trained for those issues, but has learned just to avoid you when they need to do those behaviors. So that's another one that's really important to puzzle out first, because again, much easier to solve those problems. Hi, Sarah. welcome, and happy Friday. I'm like very happy it's Friday. I also had a lot of caffeine today, and I'm like jittery. So this is what you get. All right. So what's next? Another thing that can look a lot like separation anxiety is confinement anxiety. For many of us, when we've got a new dog, or maybe just especially when we've got a new dog, some of us use crates forever, but we leave them in crates when we leave, because we don't want them to, or we need to manage their behavior, and we know that. And so using a crate can be a good thing to do. However, if your dog is, like I said, vocalizing excessively, howling, barking, whining, crying, or scratching at the crate, or otherwise looking very anxious and unable to settle in the crate, and you've got cameras and you see this, it could be that the dog is just uncomfortable being confined, or it could be that being confined is making their anxiety about being left alone worse. Yeah, so sometimes you can test this out by leaving the dog with a camera so that you can see what happens when you're gone. But leaving the house and leaving your dog unconfined, or at least with more access than just the crate, and observe their behavior, see how it changes. Are they still a little bit anxious? Then that's something we can work on, but maybe losing the crate for now can help. Or are they totally fine? It was just the crate that was causing all that anxiety. Another good thing to rule out, or even if it is separation anxiety, it can help you in the training process by having that information or data, like April said earlier. Yes, so there's confinement anxiety. There are just external triggers. Many dogs like to bark at stuff going on outside. Whether it's people or animals, other dogs, it's a source of entertainment or enjoyment for many dogs, which again can kind of go back to that boredom piece. But in addition, when we know that it's external triggers causing the problem, it gives us a more focused way to address it. And how we do that is limit the dog's access to those sights or sounds. If it's visual stimulation outside the window, like with my guy here, he likes to just watch out the window and bark at stuff he sees. In those cases, depending on your house layout, your furniture setup, and your individual dog, just shutting the blinds might help. With us, in many cases, that'll do it. However, for some dogs, they'll tear down the blinds just to get to do this. So in those cases, you might actually want to put up a gate or close the door and limit the dog's access to the room with external windows. Or sometimes just simply putting up, they have window frost or film, that tape that you just put up on the window, or at least the bottom half of the window, so that the dog doesn't have that visual stimulation. But it's not always visual. Sometimes it's even sounds, which sounds are even harder for us to control. But there are still things that we can do to kind of dampen the sound from outside that causes all of these vocalizations and behaviors that we don't like. And some things that I recommend for so many people, because this is even more common than separation anxiety, is the barking, and it happens a lot even when we are home. So what I'm going to suggest next can help you if your dog is reacting to external noises, whether you're home or not. Maybe could even help more if you're home, because it drives us crazy, right? So we have to find ways to limit the dog sensing the sound outside. And there's a variety of things that you can do. So you can muffle the sound by using other sounds inside the home. So set up some speakers strategically, and you can play different things, and what you choose to put on the speakers will depend on you, your preferences, and your dog. But commonly, I like to use just white noise or brown noise or pink noise. Did you know that there's a difference? We've looked into the differences in all of these things, and it has to do with the pitches of the sounds that are being played and the combinations thereof. It's so interesting. Turns out I like pink noise for myself best, but anyway, so just kind of that radio static sound that can kind of like dampen the salience of noises coming from outside. Or if you prefer, you can play music, and the variety of music, again, doesn't have to be classical music. It can absolutely, you can play what you like, play what your dog likes, choose whatever you want, as long as it's working for the two of you. Yeah, but a lot of people think that it has to be a particular type of music, but I find that whatever you listen to normally, if it's separation anxiety, what you listen to normally is probably going to be the best fit for your dog, because it's going to be what they're used to. It's going to provide a sense of familiarity, which is really what you're going for. It's not the sound itself. It's the sense of familiarity. So, like as an example, in our case, when I first got Dizzy, I was leaving him crated and with sounds and all, and I found that he was best able to settle when I would just put on a podcast, because when I was around, we listened to mostly podcasts, and whether or not that is your thing, I do find that having kind of just conversational human speech can be even more helpful than music. So just keep that in mind. TV, I do prefer podcast over like TV or radio, because the ads and stuff that will play after the show on the TV, sometimes there are sounds even on the TV that are similar to the ones outside that can trigger your dog. So that's why I like to go with with a podcast or even an audiobook, something that is going to go on for a long time, and it's just talking. You could put me on, play this video. Hi Jackie, welcome. So okay. Yes, so playing some sort of sound. There's a lot that can go into that. So, but you can also, we talked about moving the dog away, just putting them in a different room or a different part of the house, away from external windows and doors. You can also, if look up soundproofing strategies. A lot of times, adding sound absorbing materials to the space that your dog is going to be in, again, can help dampen the sound, whether that's more furniture or rugs or blankets or soft things that absorb sound, can make those external noises less salient for your dog, which can lessen the chances that they're going to react and bark and upset your neighbors and all of that good stuff. Another thing that might be good to mention here is, if you have a dog that reacts to doorbells and that sort of thing, good idea would be to just cut the doorbell out entirely if you can. meaning put a sign up next to or over the doorbell so that it's anybody showing up at your house it's loud and clear. Please do not push the doorbell. If they're a delivery person, they can just leave the package silently, no big deal. If it is an actual visitor to your home, tell them to text you or call you, or get like a silent doorbell. There's so many electronic doorbells these days, like Ring, that make circumventing the dog issue a little bit easier for us dog owners. But doorbells are the bane of many dog owners' existence. So yeah, getting around that can be very, very helpful. And if the dog's issue is confined to just reacting to those sounds, whatever the cause, sometimes training, and this is more when you're home, if that's the issue, training them to do a different behavior other than barking can be a lot of fun. And very satisfactory for us. when you hear those sounds that your dog reacts to, and they just like go do the other thing that you train them to do, that feels really good. We've been working on that too, and it's a work in progress. It's not a quick fix. I will tell you that, but it's easier than separation anxiety training, and it can just be really cool to see it when you actually see the fruits of your labor there. So let's get back to okay. So we were discussing the other ways, or the other conditions that can look a lot like separation anxiety. So external triggers, I've listed here separately from sound sensitivity, because sound sensitivity is another. It's a fear, it's a phobia that is treated in a similar way to separation anxiety, in that the best way to treat it is through a combination of desensitization and counter conditioning, usually combined with medication. If it's a real fear or a phobia, like a lot of dogs just go into fits of terror when they hear thunderstorms or fireworks. This is a huge issue for a lot of dogs, and you wouldn't necessarily have to do all of that if it's simply a dog just enjoying reacting to the outdoors. So that also can be a big issue for dogs. And the thing about sound sensitivity is a lot of times it can occur alongside separation anxiety, so they can be comorbid or separate, and trying to figure out which, or if both are affecting your dog is really important in your treatment plan. But yeah, it's for sound sensitivity, it's got its own protocol. But important to just be aware that could be an additional factor. Then there are medical conditions that can show up looking like separation anxiety, or could be the cause of adult onset separation anxiety. And that can be very tricky. If you've got a dog who is in adulthood, meaning they're 6, 7, 8 and older, if they've never experienced separation anxiety, but they do in adulthood, well into adulthood, I should say, something that is something to consider, that is something called canine cognitive dysfunction, which, yeah, I'm blanking on the word now, but it's a condition that in dogs it's adult onset and can look like separation anxiety, but would be probably treated differently unless it is canine cognitive dysfunction that is causing a bit of separation anxiety. So again, these things get complicated and they can overlap, and it's why bringing a professional on board early is a really, really good idea. Then there are many, like any major life changes for the dog, um, could also cause a lot of anxiety in general, but that can be worsened when they are separated from their people. Some of these big life changes could be if you move home. For us, Dizzy, he was able to settle in a crate when I would leave when I first had him. But when we changed houses, suddenly this is a much bigger problem for us, and we're still working through it. So that's something that can worsen or cause, not cause. It can trigger separation anxiety, or it can simply be its own anxiety that's looking like separation anxiety. So moving home, just a big change in your household composition. So this day and age, there are, people have roommates that change. They, kids that the dog grew up with might move away to college. People split up and get divorced, and there are lots of household changes that can occur that can really affect our dogs. So that excuse me, that's something that can worsen things for the dog. Just or any drastic change in routine. This is something that we're all experiencing in the last year and the year to come. Are suddenly we're home a lot more, or suddenly we're home a lot less. Anytime you start a school program, you start a new job, and it changes your routine. These types of things can really make things worse for the dog. If a dog has recently been adopted, like if you've just gotten a dog and you haven't even had them for 3 months, sometimes that can be just part of the dog's decompression. They're settling in, they're just getting used to their new family, their new environment, and so that's something to be aware of. That dogs that are very new to the home could just be experiencing this process of settling in. It's still a good idea with those dogs to manage them being exposed to things that are potentially anxiety producing, but it may give you hope to know that if they haven't even been at home 3 months, that things may get a little bit better if you handle it right when in the beginning. Let's see. April says, our poor Norin was a rescue who lived with a lady in her car. Oh my goodness. You're not sure how long. Here, and then in a dog rescue facility, and now with us. He has been through a lot. And though rehoming, again, kind of going back to like, we don't know what causes separation anxiety, but we know that being rehomed isn't the cause of separation anxiety, because plenty of dogs are rehomed and don't develop separation anxiety. But it can trigger separation anxiety in a dog who's already prone, which is probably why we do see a lot of cases in dogs who have been rehomed. Again, to use my own little guy as an example, his previous owner told me that they had never seen any signs of separation anxiety in him, but when he came to me, I did notice that he did struggle, and now that we've moved again, even though he didn't change owners, he changed homes again, and it seems to have worsened his condition. So yeah, oh gosh, big life changes like that they're very hard on dogs. I know for myself, I used to take it for granted that dogs are just as a species, dogs are happy-go-lucky. They can handle anything we throw at them. They bounce back so easy. And I have since learned that not all of them do. In fact, a lot of them don't. And the more stability and routine and familiarity that we can offer dogs, the easier time they have it. So yeah. Which is why, one of our big goals for our meaning trainers is to help people find ways to keep the dog that they have in their home, which again just goes back to why my main goal is to help people strengthen their bond with their dog and understand their dog, and yeah, find ways of living with their dog that is suitable for both the human household members and the dog. Because it's hard. It's hard for the dogs when things change, and it's hard for us. I mean, nobody ever wants to give up a dog, right? But sometimes it just feels overwhelming and hopeless, like you'll never figure out these problems. So that's why we are here, to help people work through issues like that. So to continue on with our list here. Last thing I had that I wanted to mention, that could be a big life change for the dog, is for people who do live in multi-dog households. If those dogs are very closely bonded, the loss of one dog can cause mourning and a lot of anxiety for the dog who's left. And it's a difficult process, and helping your remaining dog work through that is worthwhile, but also can show up looking like separation anxiety. So, and as I mentioned before, just to further complicate the issue, a lot of these issues can overlap. They can occur in addition to separation anxiety. But yeah, we want to start by kind of ruling out what we can, because like I said, the solution to any one of those individual problems is going to be easier than treating it as if it were separation anxiety. Because treating separation anxiety could solve some of these problems. It could, but you might be doing more work than you have to. And yeah, so it's not, we rule out some problems. It's not always as simple as just like, oh, checking those boxes off. It's not this, it's not this, it's not this. But we have to start with figuring out what's going on at home when you're not there. So to, who said it first? Greg. Yes, Greg said, he mentioned that he's got a camera to watch their dog and see what's happening when they're out of the house. That's where I would start, guys. You have to get eyes on your dog. Just simply stepping out and trying to hear if they're barking or not, or leaving and coming back and finding destruction, not going to give us the data that we need to puzzle out, what's actually happening. So we need cameras. We need to be watching live, and have eyes on the dog, and watch their body language. Since they can't speak to us, their body language and their behavior is really all we have to go on. So we need that information. Let's see. And then if you don't already have a camera, there are, oh my gosh, this day and age, you have so many options. You could go out and get a webcam. A lot of them are very inexpensive, and there's a variety to choose from. You can get pet-specific cameras. Some of them, even talk or give treats to the dog. Those I do like to be careful with, because for dogs who are sound sensitive, or easily startled, or just could be confused about what's going on, those the features, the feature where you can microphone speak to your dog through the camera, or even the treat dispensing features, some of those can actually make things worse for some dogs if they're very sensitive. So either introducing those cameras and those features in a gradual, systematic way, or just not using them at all is probably better. But sometimes they're cool, and sometimes dogs can like those features. So again, it comes down to your individual dog, and figuring out what works for them. But yeah, in addition to webcams and those fun pet specific cameras, you can also just use the devices that you've got at home. many of us have at least two devices, maybe a laptop and a phone, or even a tablet, and on and on and on. Basically anything that you can either install an app on, or maybe just use like conferencing software like Zoom. You can set up one device in the home, facing where your dog is likely to be hanging out, and you've got your phone or the other device with you so that you can kind of watch. You can call yourself on Zoom, or use an app like a nanny cam type app. I think Doggy Cam, I believe, is one like this. I haven't used it. It's been referred to me or recommended to me. So yeah, you've got a variety of options of ways to get eyes on your dog very cheaply and easily. So that's step one. It's just get that set up. I do find it easier, especially because I want this to be kind of a permanent installation in my home. I mean, the dog's going to be there for a while, and we're not gonna solve this in one day. So it makes things easier for you if you have something that's just set up already, that you can just call yourself or check the app or whatever you've got to do, without having to set up the device each and every time. So making it something that's just, it's in your home and easily accessible is I think the way to go. Next, once you've got your eyes on the dog, either record what's going on, or write it down, and just write down as much as you can. We like details, but we need to know what the dog's behavior is. What are they doing? And is what they're doing something that never occurs when you're home, or is it happening and it's more intense or more frequent when you're not there? Making as many observations as you possibly can is going to be helpful, especially if you end up working with a trainer or a professional who specializes in separation anxiety, because a trainer is going to want those details. Recordings are nice because we don't always see everything. Even a trainer is not going to see everything the first watch through, and when I say detailed, I mean very specific. I'm talking about, how is your dog's body posture? How is their muscle tone, in the sense that, like, are they tense or do they look more relaxed? How their facial muscles, what are they, are they panting? Is the panting fast? Does it look different than when they're panting because they've played or they're warm? Are they eating? Have you left food? And are they leaving the food alone? Do they go get drinks of water? Are they pacing? Where have they spent the majority of their time? How are they holding their ears? I mean, I could spend the rest of this hour and beyond just listing minute details of a dog's behavior that we might need to collect to really figure out what's going on. So again, just being aware of, keeping track of, observing what our dogs are doing, what they look like when they're home alone. We need that data. And then regardless of what the ultimate diagnosis ends up being, or just something to put in place until you get a professional on board to assess the situation and help you through, you can't go wrong starting with management. And management in this case means, and no one's going to like to hear this, but not leaving your dog alone at all. That can be very, very difficult to hear because we have lives, we have things that we need to do. Like, that sounds crazy, like, to expect that you never leave your dog alone. But it's a good place to start. Even if they're if their issue just ends up being like I said, boredom or frustration, things like that, temporarily not leaving your dog alone can at least stop those naughty behaviors from happening, which again protects your home, keeps you from having to spend money on repairs or replacing furniture, things like that. It's at least going to stop the problem behaviors from occurring, which is always where we start, no matter what behavior problem we are dealing with our dogs. But yeah, if you are at all unsure about whether if your dog is experiencing separation anxiety, or how to figure out the problem, it's a good thing to just suspend any absences from the dog, put that management in place until you get someone to help you figure it out. If it does end up being separation anxiety, you're going to want to do this anyway. It is a crucial component of a separation anxiety training plan. If you're going to make progress, suspending those absences has to be a part of it. Now, it doesn't mean that you can never leave your dog. There are ways around this. Recruiting, again, friends, neighbors, professionals, sitters, walkers, trainers. You can get other people to keep your dog company, household members, family members. You can get other people to keep your dog company when you have to go and take care of business. And a trainer can help you get very creative. There are, people have come up with some crazy, awesome, creative solutions to this. But if your dog is experiencing isolation distress and not hyperattachment, there are so many ways to help you manage until you get to a diagnosis and a training plan and a solution. So yeah, it won't hurt if it doesn't end up being separation anxiety, but it's going to be a part of it if you are addressing separation anxiety. It is something that's very hard to hear, but for our separation anxiety dogs and puppies, it is necessary. Another thing that you can do with those cameras, or just out of the corner of your eye, possibly, is observe your dog's behavior as you're just getting ready to leave, even before you leave the house. Like I said before, a dog who's really anxious about being left alone, through experiencing this pattern of you getting ready and then leaving and then them feeling these whatever feelings they're feeling, they learn to pick up on the signs that you're about to leave, so that they know, oh gosh, that scary thing's about to happen, and you will notice their behavior start to change. A lot of the things that we do are part of our leaving routine. We have to maybe pack up a bag or a purse, turn off lights, maybe pick up keys, don our shoes or our coats, and on and on and on. There are so many things that our dogs can learn to pick up on. That is a sign that my people are leaving. And they start to experience that anxiety even before you're out of the house. So that's something to pay close attention to try and figure out, what is my dog? What are they actually experiencing? Yeah, so you just notice if they look worried. Another thing to do, as possibly an initial step, I kind of already mentioned this, but maybe don't crate them for now. Sometimes using the crates causes just something we call confinement anxiety, because putting a dog in a crate and locking them in, it takes away their feeling of control or their feeling of predictability, which can cause anxiety in and of itself, or maybe make the separation anxiety worse. Yeah, and while crates can contain some of the problem behavior, like the destruction or the soiling, they are not going to, if it's separation anxiety, they're not going to treat the problem, and it can really only make it worse. And if you're managing the problem by suspending any absences from your dog, you won't need the crate anyway, because you won't be gone, so the problem behaviors don't have a chance to occur. And then finally, call a trainer, because as you may be starting to tell just from listening to me talk today, this stuff does start to get very complicated. And um, regardless of what label we end up putting on the problem behavior, no matter what it is, any issue is going to be easier to treat the earlier you start. So getting professional help on board, never a bad idea. Let's see. April says, when we first started to work with Norin, we put him in his crate and he would bust out. And then we put locks on the crate and he would push it 6 feet from its original spot. Yeah, and you guys are not the only ones who have experienced this. I hear this a lot. I have actually been shocked to hear how many dogs are capable of escaping from wire crates. Like, they are Houdinis. I mean, it's amazing. I have actually, I think I have yet to see a video of a dog doing this, but they're doing it because a lot of people say, we left him in the crate, we made sure it was locked, and somehow this dog got out. I have had other friends and clients say that this has happened, and it's, frankly, I think it's amazing. And it shows a lot of determination and maybe ingenuity on our dog's part. But it happens, and it can be dangerous for our dogs, right? So if they can figure out a way to get out of those crates, it's probably not easy, and they might have to be contorting themselves or pushing through spaces. Wire crates, you never know. I mean, dogs can end up with cuts or scratches or bruises from trying to do that, and if it is combined with this anxiety component, this is a sad thing about separation anxiety, guys. For a lot of dogs for whom their panic is expressed through just those attempts to escape, like I said, they don't have control necessarily over that behavior. If it's separation anxiety, they're out of their minds. They're not thinking clearly. They are just trying to do whatever they can possibly do to escape that feeling of panic. And so for dogs who are crated and escaping the crate, or for dogs who are scratching and biting at doors and windows and the walls, they will do those things to the point of self-injury. And that's what I mean by it's the sad thing about it. It's like they are so out of control that they don't even realize, or maybe don't even feel, clawing until their nails bleed, or scratching themselves by trying to squeeze through windows or through the crates. This happens for some dogs, and it's just sad. But I do want to take this opportunity to point out that just because a dog isn't hurting themselves in their panic doesn't mean that they're not experiencing the same level of internal fear. It's just that their fear looks different from the outside, in the same way that for us to be able to relate, maybe, like, have you ever watched those they're like compilation videos of people pulling like scary pranks, like the spider in the elevator prank, or David's messing with my lights again. But those like pranks where people are they're scaring other people, and how people react in their moment of pure startle or fear is very, very different. Some people just scream. Some people scream and run away. Some people run away silently. Some people attack the person or the spider or whoever's scaring them. Some people, and I think that I would be this person, although hopefully nobody ever scares me like that, because I really don't like being scared. But I would be the person who just like shrinks back silently and doesn't make a sound and doesn't run. Like, that would probably be me. But my point here is that the expression of fear in that moment when you're not thinking at all can look very differently. And so though a dog may, though, a number of dogs in front of us may be experiencing fear of being left alone, they may show it in different ways, which is why we talk about like those symptoms of separation anxiety in the beginning, because it may show up looking like that. It may be different. David's apologizing for messing with my lights. He throws me off. Anyway, yeah, where was I? Anyway, we kind of got off track there, but yes, those, escaping the crates. That's, yeah, it happens, and usually our first response is to, well, we just have to make the crate more secure. But so many times dogs will figure out how to get out of even those situations. It's like, they kind of amaze me. But if they are that determined, it might be worthwhile to figure out, is there an underlying issue? Because yeah, it can contain the problem, but it's not necessarily going to treat that underlying issue. So we end up looking for other solutions anyway. So, but on this note, let's talk about some things that can help every dog, regardless of separation anxiety, no separation anxiety, home alone issues or not, things that are nice to do for every dog, that can help, not going to hurt. For dogs who are new to your home, I love the idea of including, as part of just their general training, welcome home package, for adult dogs who are recently adopted, or new puppies. It doesn't matter. Every dog could use some home alone training, which can can go very, very quickly. If a dog is not is not prone to separation anxiety, you're going to speed right through it. But just as you would, you're going to go through your basic house training, you're going to manage them while they learn what's appropriate to chew and what's not. You can also do a slow introduction to being left alone. And you can start very, very easy, day one, just going to the door, opening the door, or stepping out of the door for a second, and not going anywhere. You come right back in. You don't make a big deal about it. But if this is included as just part of your dog's routine from day one of bringing them home, they learn very early on what to expect. And like I said, a lot of anxiety is caused by not knowing what to expect, or being exposed to fear-inducing levels of alone time right off the bat, or suddenly, and being kind of shocked by it. For a lot of new puppies, people will bring them home on a weekend. They spend the whole weekend with their people. You're bonding. It's really fun. It's an awesome time. But then Monday we go back to work and the puppy's like, what? Whoa, like what happened? So some people even, they might take a week off to help their new dog adjust to being home. But if they don't include as part of that some small, very miniature absences from the dog, it can come as quite a shock when you go back to work. So yeah, this is, I think, good for every dog. Another thing that can really help is widening their circle of people whom they have very positive, strong bonds with. This might be, for some of us, more tricky this day and age, this year and last year particularly. But yeah, if they bond, and this is my most helpful for my hyper attached dogs like my own, and I am totally guilty of spending way too much time with Dizzy, and perhaps not recruiting other people to be part of his circle. But the more people that your dog has close bonds with, the more opportunities that you are going to have to get your dog out of the house and away from you, becoming part of their routine, getting them used to other environments, other activities, and other relationships. So whether that's you have a neighborhood playmate and you can trade times where your dogs go to each other's houses, whether you have your dog go to daycare, whether you have a dog walker that they go out with daily, or whether you just have friends or family that they bond closely with and are able, therefore, to spend time over there without you. It also opens up the possibilities for when you need to travel and you can't take your dog and you want other people to be able to care for your dog without being so restricted because of the separation anxiety. Starting that now, that building of those relationships, can help you later on. Even within your household. This is something we call spread the love, where a lot of times, dogs will have their primary caretaker, that person who does maybe most of the training or even most of the feeding and playtime and cuddling. And so dogs will develop a very close bond with that person. And so it can be very helpful to have, if you've got other people living in the household, to have those other people provide some of those good things that dogs like in life. Mainly food, play, even the training, because we make training very, very positive, and dogs will really, really love that too. It's very nice bonding activity, because again, it provides mental enrichment in addition to feeling like play and getting food. It combines all of the good things. So yeah, having everybody in the household provide those things for the dog can help the dog not just feel so attached to just one person. And this again can help with hyperattachment, separation anxiety. It opens up those management doors for you. So yeah, okay. So those are some things that can help really any dog, but especially if they are struggling with separation anxiety. Before we go, I've been talking longer than I thought I would today, but before we go, I just want to throw some things out there, because I see comments online all the time and people asking for help, and they get all these suggestions, and they can be misleading, or at least, wastes of time for people who truly need to address separation anxiety sooner. So I just want to name quickly, hopefully, some things that we know don't work for separation anxiety. Getting another dog, very unlikely to solve the first dog's separation anxiety. So if you're getting a second dog as a solution, I recommend addressing it via training or another way first, because unless you want a second dog, getting another one is likely to make things more complicated for you. Not only could the second dog also have separation anxiety, but then you've got two dogs to manage at home, and the first one is likely to continue to suffer from that anxiety, regardless of the presence of another dog. Usually, separation anxiety has much more to do with being near humans, whereas other animals, very unlikely to help. Anecdotally, some people will tell you, you will hear this from some people, that they got another dog and their dog's separation anxiety just went away. Very glad for those people, but they are in the minority. So again, unless you want a second dog, not the best way to solve the problem. Other things that don't work are just simply leaving them with food or a food toy. While some dogs, this can be part of a management solution, and it could keep them happy. Dizzy's making some strange noises. Sometimes food or a puzzle like that could keep some dogs occupied and potentially unstressed for maybe 15-20 minutes, which may buy you time in the early stages of training. It is unlikely, it's not going to solve real separation anxiety, and it's going to possibly give us a false read on how well they're actually doing alone. In a lot of cases, that food might be a distraction, and could delay the onset of the anxiety that happens when you're gone. But for some dogs, don't experience that anorexia when they're alone. So they will eat or consume the food in the food puzzle despite also feeling anxious at the same time, which is how we get that false read. We assume that because they're eating, they're okay for that time, but not necessarily. So careful with food if it's real separation anxiety. Other training that can claims to boost confidence is wonderful, and you should do it. I do it myself, and I love it. But as a solution to separation anxiety, unlikely to help. Some other things that I see pop up very, very frequently are leaving behind something that smells like you, a t-shirt that you've worn, or a blanket or something, unlikely to help. If you think about it, this is kind of silly because your entire house smells like you. So if they're anxious and they're at home, leaving another shirt that smells like you is not going to make too much of a difference. Similarly, and you may laugh, but people do this, is leaving a mannequin that is maybe dressed like you. Again, there may be cases anecdotally of dogs who will cuddle up with this mannequin, but they are in the minority. It's going to be maybe effort wasted on your part. So I mean, I don't know, if you really want to go that route, you could try it, but unlikely to help. And training them not to follow you around the house. Some dogs with separation anxiety will follow you around the house, but if you look at the numbers, approximately 1 in 5 or 20% of dogs, we believe, experience separation anxiety in some form, whereas around, I want to say it's like 80% of dogs follow their owners from polls, which means that 60% of dogs who follow their owners around the house don't experience separation anxiety. So it's not super correlated, which means that addressing the following you around, I mean, unless the following you bothers you, is going to be a waste of time. And finally, and very importantly, coming home and punishing the dog for the behaviors that occurred while you were gone, like if they peed or pooped in the house, if they destroyed anything in the house, or if they barked incessantly and upset the whole neighborhood, coming home and punishing them for naughty behaviors is not going to help, and if anything, it's going to make things worse, because your dog has just been in a panic because you're gone, and then you've come home and been very scary, and they don't know what's going on. They're not going to connect any punishment to their behavior. It's just going to confuse and make their anxiety worse. In general, when it comes to our animals, punishment, though sometimes, depending on the behavior, it can mask the behavior, in a lot of cases, you're going to make things worse. There is fallout, and it may sound surprising, but we don't actually need to use punishments to train dogs. You can get your dog to behave very beautifully without using punishment at all. And since punishment feels icky for a lot of us, this should be really good news. But again, a topic for another day. So Oh, okay. And a few more myths, because there are many when it comes to separation anxiety. Um, I just want to reiterate for anyone who is concerned about their dog's behavior and thinks it could be separation anxiety, know that it is treatable. Remember that you did not cause it. A lot of us can feel guilty when we think that we may have done something to cause this condition. You didn't. It is not because your dog's been spoiled in any way. Also, unfortunately, they are unlikely to grow out of it. We kind of talked about those dogs who have had major life changes, change of home, who may need a little bit of time to settle in, and you can use the management and desensitization to help them through that process. But if it's separation anxiety, they're likely to get through it much more quickly. And finally, I'm going to leave you here with the myth that you need to be more of a pack leader, that your lack of leadership is causing these sorts of behaviors. That's just ridiculous. I'll say no more about it. So yeah. Anybody, questions? Anybody? You guys have had some really good points that you've brought up here today, and there's lots more that we can go into, but separation anxiety is it's a complex and can be a long-winded and difficult issue to treat, and the more help you have upfront in treating it, the better off you're going to be. At a minimum, for at least for helping you feel like you're on the right track and you've got support through it. So if you do suspect separation anxiety, contact your vet and your trainer or a vet behaviorist to help you through the process. And if anyone, excuse me, is promising you fast results, it's either not true separation anxiety, or that person is a charlatan, or you have gotten very miraculously lucky. Separation anxiety is not a quick fix. There are no quick fixes, unfortunately. So although we can hope and wish for those magic products, the pills and the nutraceuticals and the blankets and the shirts and all these things that we hope will just fix the separation anxiety, nothing really solves real separation anxiety except training and medication. And the sooner you get started, the sooner you get through it. And good news is now we all have now's the perfect time. Now is a really good opportunity until the world opens back up. We have a great, we've been forced kind of into this situation where we are home more often, which makes the management piece easier, which again is where we start anyway. So it's a perfect time to start working on this, guys. So April says, thank you. She says, such good stuff. Going to rewatch this again. Love the busted myth about the pack leader. Yep. We have a whole nother video on that topic. So it's a good one too. So yeah, that's where I'll leave you guys. Thank you so much for joining and for participating in the conversation. If I can help, you can reach me through my website, which is jennifermalloway.com. I can be that trainer to help you through the process, or I can at least provide some resources for you. And hopefully the stream itself has helped point you in the right direction. So April says, can using calming treats help with the behavior training? So, it's a good question. They can. It depends though. It sometimes comes down to finding the right the right thing for your dog. There's a lot of I would clearly I'm having trouble with where to start to answer this question. I would talk to your vet. And I don't mean that as a cop-out answer. It's just that vets are going to be able to advise you in a more educated and well-rounded way about what is likely to work. There's a very interesting book called Placebo. I think it's called Placebo in Pets, or it's phrased in the form of a question, but it's really, really interesting, and it probably has way more information than you want in answer to that question. But essentially, yes, I'll say there's two categories. You've got pharmaceuticals and you've got nutraceuticals, which is probably what you're asking about, the over-the-counter stuff, the stuff you can buy in the store or online. Some of it is going to do nothing for a dog. Some of it may work for some dogs. Either way, the goal with either one you choose is going to be to lower the dog's stress threshold, which we do want, and that can help with training. So if we can bring the dog's stress threshold down, it buys you a little bit more room in that very early stages of training, so that you can make more progress faster. So in that sense, yes, they can help if an individual product works for your dog. But whether or not any one thing, I can't say like this absolutely works or this doesn't. It would really be testing it. And the problem with the nutraceutical category is that there's very little scientific study or evidence backing it up, and they can be pricey. So you could try it. A lot of them are unlikely to hurt, but it might be worth having the discussion first so that you don't waste money where you didn't need to, is what I'm trying to say. So that's a really, I'm so glad you asked. It's such a good question, but it's kind of a difficult question to ask, or to answer rather. But super important to kind of talk about anytime you're addressing separation anxiety. So thank you. Anyway, okay, cool. That's it for today, guys. Again, thank you for the really awesome questions and your contributions to the conversation. If you have enjoyed this and have not already subscribed, please hit subscribe on YouTube, or like or follow me on Facebook, and like and share the video if you feel like it. All right. Have a really good weekend, guys. I will see you on Monday. Until then, farewell.